My name is Jake Morrison, and I've been the sheriff of Cochise County, Arizona, for over 18 years. I've dealt with all kinds of people: human traffickers, drug smugglers, and of course, cartels. I thought I'd seen the worst and most despicable things imaginable. But what happened in the Sonora Desert that summer of 2019 made me realize the most terrifying things crossing our borders at night weren't the cartels, and this incident made me question everything I thought I knew about the desert. Before continuing, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support is very important to us. The Sonoran Desert doesn't forgive mistakes. In July, when temperatures hit 118 degrees, it becomes a furnace that kills the unprepared in hours. I've recovered too many bodies over the years. Migrants who ran out of water, tourists who thought a morning hike would be fun, drug mules abandoned by their handlers. But the bodies we found on July 15, 2019, were different. The call came in at 5:23 a.m. from Border Patrol. "Sheriff Morrison, we need you out here. Sector 7, mile marker 42. Agent Rodriguez's voice was steady, but I'd worked with him for 10 years. Something had him rattled. "What have you got, Rodriguez?" "Bodies, sir. Multiple, but..." He paused. "You need to see this yourself." I grabbed Deputy Sarah Chen and Deputy Marcus Williams. Sarah was ex-military, tough as nails, been with the department for 6 years. Marcus was younger, 3 years on the force, but sharp, good instincts. We drove out in 2 units, the sunrise painting the desert in shades of orange and red that looked too much like dried blood. Sector 7 was one of the most active smuggling corridors in our county. 30 miles of nothing but saguaro cacti, volcanic rock, and scorpions between the Mexican border and the nearest town. The cartels loved it because it was so remote. We hated it for the same reason. The Border Patrol had set up a perimeter around a cluster of ancient saguaros, some standing 40 feet tall. Rodriguez met us at the tape, his usually brown face pale despite the desert sun. "How many?" I asked. 7. All male, appear to be Mexican nationals based on clothing and personal effects. I'd seen plenty of border crossing casualties. Dehydration, exposure, sometimes violence between rival groups. This should have been routine. But Rodriguez's hands were shaking as he lifted the tape for us. "There's something else, Sheriff. The bodies. They're arranged." The scene was like nothing I'd encountered in nearly 2 decades of law enforcement. 7 bodies positioned in a perfect circle, each one facing outward, their backs to the center. They were seated cross-legged, hands placed precisely on their knees. Their heads were tilted back, mouths open toward the sky. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered. Sarah was already photographing everything, her military training keeping her focused on documentation rather than the horror of what we were seeing. I envied her compartmentalization. "When were they found?" I asked Rodriguez. "Drone picked up the heat signatures at 0300. Thought it might be a group resting. When they hadn't moved by 0500, we came to investigate." "Heat signatures? These bodies are fresh?" "That's the thing, Sheriff. Coroner's preliminary estimate says they've been dead at least 72 hours. But the drone's thermal imaging showed heat patterns, like they were still alive." I knelt beside one of the bodies. Male, probably mid-20s, wearing typical crossing gear. Dark clothes, worn boots, a backpack still strapped to his shoulders. No obvious wounds, no blood. His expression was what disturbed me most. Not peaceful like death sometimes brings, but frozen in what looked like ecstasy or terror. Maybe both. "Any identification?" "Nothing official, but Sheriff." Rodriguez led me to the center of the circle. There, carved into the hard-packed desert floor, was a symbol I'd never seen before. It looked like 3 interlocking circles with lines radiating outward, almost like a sun, but wrong somehow. The carving was deep, precise, must have taken hours. "Cartel signature?" Sarah asked, joining us. "Never seen it before," I said. "And this isn't their style. Too ceremonial." Marcus was examining one of the bodies more closely. "Sheriff, look at their necks. Each corpse had identical marks on their throat, 2 puncture wounds, about an inch apart. But unlike snake bites, these wounds had a peculiar star-shaped pattern around them, as if the skin had been burned or branded." "Vampire bats," Marcus suggested weakly. "Not down here," Rodriguez said. "And bats don't arrange their victims in circles." I stood up, surveying the scene. The morning sun was climbing higher, and something caught my eye. The shadows cast by the bodies weren't random. As the sun moved, the shadows aligned to point toward a specific direction, northeast toward the Dragoon Mountains. "Rodriguez, has your team swept the area? Standard grid search, 1-mile radius. Found some footprints heading north, but they just stop, like whoever made them vanished mid-stride." "Show me." We followed him about 300 yards from the crime scene. In the sandy wash between 2 rock formations, clear footprints led away from the bodies. Then, exactly as Rodriguez described, they simply ended. No disturbance in the sand around them, no indication of someone jumping or being lifted. They just stopped. "Could be rocky ground ahead where prints wouldn't show," Sarah suggested, but even she didn't sound convinced. I was about to respond when my radio crackled. "Sheriff, this is dispatch. We've got a situation." It was Betty, our dispatcher for the past 15 years. Nothing rattled Betty, but her voice was tight with concern. "Go ahead, Betty." "Missing persons report just came in. 7 Mexican nationals left Agua Prieta 4 days ago to cross. Family says they were heading through Sector 7. The timing fit. I looked at the 7 bodies arranged in their perfect circle. Betty, I need you to contact the Mexican consulate. Tell them we may have found their missing persons, and get Dr. Emily Reeves from the university, the anthropologist." "The bone lady? Why do you need—" "Just trust me, Betty. Something about this scene, it's not normal." I turned back to my team. "Sarah, I want every inch of this photographed and documented. Marcus, help Border Patrol expand the search grid. I want to know if there are any other sites like this. Rodriguez, I need all your drone footage from the past week." "Sheriff," Rodriguez pulled me aside, lowering his voice. "There's one more thing." We didn't want to say anything over the radio, but our sensors have been picking up unusual heat signatures for the past month. Groups moving at night, but too fast to be human, too organized to be animals. Command thought it was a glitch. How fast? Crossing 10 miles of rough terrain in under 30 minutes. That was impossible. Olympic athletes couldn't maintain that pace in the desert, especially at night. Why didn't you report this? We did. Brass told us to recalibrate our equipment and stop filing false reports. But Sheriff, I've been working this sector for 12 years. I know when something's off, and lately... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Lately, it feels like we're not alone out here. A buzzard circled overhead, its shadow passing over the bodies. In the desert, death usually brought scavengers quickly, but I noticed something odd. No buzzards had landed. No coyotes had approached. Even the flies seemed to be avoiding the corpses. "Sheriff Morrison!" Marcus called out. He was standing about 50 yards away near a large boulder. "You need to see this." We jogged over. Behind the boulder, hidden from the main crime scene, was another body. But this one was different. It wore the tactical gear of a Border Patrol agent. That's Agent Thompson," Rodriguez said, his voice breaking. "He went missing 3 weeks ago. We found his vehicle, but..." Thompson's body was in a similar position to the others, seated, hands on knees, head tilted back. But his uniform was intact, his service weapon still holstered. His radio was placed neatly beside him. I checked the radio. The battery was dead, but when I opened the back panel, I found something that made my blood run cold. Carved into the plastic, in tiny, precise letters, was a message. The desert remembers. The desert hungers. The desert takes. Sarah was checking Thompson's body. "Sheriff, look at the timestamp on his watch." It stopped at 3:33 a.m. exactly. "That's the same time our drone picked up the heat signatures," Rodriguez said. I stood there, looking out across the vast expanse of the Sonoran Desert. Miles of nothing but sand, rock, and secrets. Somewhere out there, something was hunting. Something that could arrange bodies like an offering, leave messages in dead languages, and move through the desert faster than anything human. "We need to set up a command post," I decided. "This is bigger than a single incident. Sarah, contact Phoenix. Tell them we need resources, but keep the details minimal for now. Marcus, I want you to research that symbol. Check archaeological databases, occult references, anything. Rodriguez, can you get me a meeting with the tribal council? This land was theirs long before it was ours. Maybe they know something." "Sheriff," Sarah asked quietly, "what are we dealing with here?" I looked back at the circle of bodies, now swarming with forensic techs but still somehow maintaining that aura of wrongness. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's been here longer than us. And I think we just woke it up. The sun climbed higher, and the desert heat began its daily assault. But for the first time in 18 years, I felt cold. The Sonoran had always been dangerous, but it was a danger I understood. Heat, dehydration, criminals. This was something else. Something that turned hardened Border Patrol agents into arranged corpses and left messages in languages that predated Columbus. My phone rang. It was Dr. Emily Reeves. "Sheriff Morrison?" Betty said, "You need an anthropologist at a crime scene? Must be something special if you're calling me." "Doc, you know those old Native American sites you're always studying? The ones with the strange petroglyphs. The astronomical markers? Yes. Why? I'm sending you a photo. Tell me if you recognize this symbol." I sent her the image of the carving from the center of the circle. The line went quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Emily? Jake, where did you find this? Crime scene, 7 bodies, why? That symbol, I've seen it exactly once before. In a sealed cave system in the Dragoons. The site was deliberately buried, probably 300 years ago. The tribal elders who showed it to me made me swear never to photograph it or share its location. What is it? They called it the Mark of the Hungry Dark. Jake, according to legend, it's a warning. Or maybe a summoning. The stories say there are things in the desert that predate humanity, things that sleep in the deep places. Every few centuries they wake up to feed. Feed on what? Life force? Spirit? Soul? Whatever you want to call it. The bodies you found, check their weight. Their weight? If the legends are true, they'll weigh significantly less than they should. Like something was taken from them but left no physical wound. I looked back at the crime scene, at the perfect circle of corpses under the blazing Arizona sun. "Doc, I need you down here, now." I'm already in my car. "Jake, be careful. The stories say once the hungry dark wakes, it doesn't stop feeding until it's satisfied. And based on those legends, 7 bodies is just the beginning." As I ended the call, a dust devil spun up near the crime scene, sending sand swirling around the bodies. For just a moment, in the swirling sand, I could have sworn I saw shapes. Tall, impossibly thin figures standing among the corpses, watching us. Then the wind died, and there was nothing but desert and death. Marcus approached, his face grave. "Sheriff, I ran that symbol through every database I could access. Nothing. But I did find something else. Similar circular body arrangements have been reported 3 times in the past 50 years. Once in New Mexico, once in Sonora, Mexico, and once in West Texas. What happened to the investigators?" "That's the thing, Sheriff. In all 3 cases, the lead investigator disappeared within a week of finding the bodies. Just vanished. No trace. I felt the weight of my badge, the responsibility of protecting this county. But how do you protect people from something that might not even be human? Something that had been here long before the first Spanish conquistador or American settler." "Double up on patrols," I ordered. "Nobody goes out alone." "And Marcus?" "Start quietly evacuating the ranches near Sector 7. Tell them we've got cartel activity, something believable." "What are we really dealing with, Sheriff?" I looked out at the desert, shimmering in the heat, beautiful and deadly as always. "I don't know, son. But I've got a feeling we're about to find out." Dr. Emily Reeves arrived at the scene just after noon, her Jeep kicking up a dust cloud that hung in the still air. She was in her 50s, sun-weathered and tough, the kind of academic who spent more time in the field than in lecture halls. She took one look at the bodies and went pale. "My God, Jake. It's exactly like the petroglyphs." She pulled out a worn notebook, flipping through pages of sketches and notes. She showed me a drawing, ancient rock art depicting figures arranged in the same circular pattern, with the same symbol at the center. This was hidden in a cave that the O'odham people sealed centuries ago. The elder who showed it to me said it depicted the last harvest. "Harvest?" Sarah asked, joining us. "That's the word he used. He said there are things that live in the deep desert, in caves and crevices that go down to the earth's heart. Every so many generations, they rise to harvest the life force of living beings." "That's ridiculous," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Emily walked around the circle, studying the bodies. "Sheriff, have these been weighed?" "Just finished," the coroner's assistant called out. "And it's weird. Based on their builds, each body is approximately 20 to 30 pounds lighter than it should be. No missing organs, no blood loss. They just weigh less." Emily nodded grimly. "The O'odham called it spirit theft. The body remains, but something essential is taken." My radio crackled. "Sheriff, this is Deputy Johnson. I'm at the Hendricks Ranch. You need to get here, now." The Hendricks Ranch was 15 miles north, right at the edge of Sector 7. Tom and Mary Hendricks had been raising cattle there for 30 years. Good people. The drive took us through some of the roughest terrain in the county, the kind of landscape that killed the unprepared and hid the unwanted. We found Deputy Johnson's cruiser at the ranch gate. The deputy himself was standing frozen, staring at the main house, or what was left of it. The roof had been peeled back like a tin can, not blown off by wind or torn by machinery, but peeled in perfect spirals, the metal twisted into patterns that hurt to look at. Inside, we could see the Hendricks family. They were seated at their dinner table, all 5 of them. Tom, Mary, their 2 teenage kids, and Tom's elderly mother. Like the bodies in the desert, they were arranged perfectly, facing outward, heads tilted back. But these were fresh. The food on the table was still warm. "I got here 20 minutes ago," Johnson said, his voice shaking. "Wellness check. Mary didn't show up for her shift at the hospital. The house was like this, but... Sheriff, watch this." He threw a rock toward the house. It stopped in midair about 10 feet from the structure, then fell straight down. "What the hell?" Marcus breathed. I picked up a handful of sand and tossed it forward. It hit an invisible barrier and slid down like rain on glass. The house was surrounded by something we couldn't see. "Emily?" I looked at the anthropologist. She was pulling equipment from her Jeep. Electromagnetic field detectors, temperature gauges, things I didn't recognize. There are stories of the harvesters leaving barriers to preserve their collection sites, to keep the energy fresh. "Energy?" Sarah asked. "Life force, soul, consciousness, whatever animates living things. Different cultures have different names for it." Her EMF detector started screaming the moment she pointed it at the house. The temperature gauge showed the area inside the barrier was 30 degrees cooler than the surrounding desert. "We need to get in there," I said. "Those bodies need to be processed." "Sheriff," Emily warned, "if the stories are true, breaking the barrier might release something, or alert something." I was about to respond when Rodriguez's voice came over the radio. "Sheriff Morrison, urgent. We've got activity on the thermal sensors. Massive movement heading your way from the south. Whatever it is, it's moving at 40 miles per hour across rough terrain. 40 miles per hour. Through the desert in daylight. How far out? 10 minutes at current speed." I made a decision. "Everyone back to the vehicles. We're falling back to the command post. Johnson, call in everyone. I want all units converging on the station. Nobody stays in the field alone." As we loaded up, I saw it in the distance, a dust cloud, but not like any I'd seen. It moved against the wind, tall and narrow, like something massive was running just below the surface of the earth. We drove hard, but the dust cloud kept pace. Emily was in my vehicle, watching the thing through binoculars. "Jake," she said quietly, "it's not kicking up dust. The dust is part of it." "What?" "Look closer." The dust isn't being disturbed by something moving through it. The dust is the thing moving. I glanced in the mirror. She was right. The cloud moved with purpose, coherence, like a sandstorm given form and will, and it was gaining. "All units, this is Sheriff Morrison. Do not engage the pursuing entity. Repeat, do not engage. Converge on the station for defensive positioning." We made it to the station just as the sun began to set. Cochise County Sheriff's Station was a fortified building designed to withstand assault from drug cartels. Reinforced walls, bulletproof glass, backup generators. But it wasn't designed for what followed us out of the desert. The dust cloud stopped just outside our perimeter, swirling in place like a tornado tethered to the ground. Through the windows we could see shapes within it. Tall, impossibly thin figures that seemed to be made of sand and shadow. "What do they want?" Marcus asked. Emily was frantically going through her notes. "According to the legends, once a harvest begins, the collectors must gather a specific number of souls. 7 times 7. 49. We found 7 this morning," Sarah calculated. 5 at the ranch. That's 12. They need 37 more, I concluded. The lights flickered. Our backup generator kicked in immediately, but the lights continued to strobe. In the moments of darkness, we could see them clearly. Beings that stood 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces that were mercifully indistinct. They pressed against the windows, and where they touched, the glass began to crack in spiral patterns. "Sheriff," Betty called from dispatch. 911 calls coming in from all over the county. People reporting missing family members, strange figures in their yards, doors opening by themselves. The harvest had begun in earnest. I grabbed the radio. "All residents of Cochise County, this is Sheriff Morrison. Lock your doors, stay inside, and do not answer for anyone you don't recognize. We have a situation under control." It was a lie, but panic would only make things worse. "Jake," Emily said urgently, I found something. In the old texts, there's mention of a way to stop a harvest, but it requires returning something that was taken. The bodies? No, older. Something taken from them long ago. The stories say the first European settlers found something in the caves, something the native tribes had been protecting. They took it, thinking it was gold or treasure. That theft broke the compact that kept the harvesters sleeping. What was taken? The texts call it the heart of the desert, a crystal or stone that regulated the barrier between our world and theirs. Rodriguez spoke up. There's a legend in my family. My great-grandfather talked about a cave in the Dragoons where the army found something in the 1880s. They took it to Fort Huachuca. It might still be there. Fort Huachuca was 60 miles north. With those things surrounding us, it might as well have been on the moon. The building shook. Outside, the dust cloud had expanded, surrounding the station completely. Through the swirling sand, we could see more figures arriving. Dozens of them. Sheriff, Deputy Johnson pointed at the security monitors. The parking lot. Our vehicles were being systematically destroyed. Not smashed or torn apart, but disassembled. Every screw, bolt, and wire was being removed and laid out in precise patterns. In minutes, our entire fleet was reduced to organized parts. They're intelligent, Emily breathed. They're showing us they understand our technology. The radio crackled with reports from across the county. The Mesa Valley Hospital reported all patients in the ICU had flatlined simultaneously, then restarted with different brain patterns. The Wilcox Police Department found 6 officers arranged in a circle in their own holding cells. A school bus full of kids returning from a field trip had stopped responding to radio calls. 37 more souls. They were being efficient. We need to get to Fort Huachuca, I decided. Emily, what else do the texts say about these things? They're old. Older than humanity. They exist partially in our dimension and partially in others. Physical weapons won't stop them, but certain frequencies of sound and light can disrupt their manifestation. The emergency sirens, Sarah suggested. We could modify them. It was worth a try. As Sarah and Marcus worked on the sirens, I contacted Fort Huachuca. Colonel James Patterson was an old friend who owed me a favor. Jim, I need to know about something the Army found in the 1880s. A crystal or artifact from a cave in the Dragoons. There was a long pause. Jake, how do you know about that? So it exists? Jake, that's classified at levels I can't even access. What's going on down there? I looked out at the dust storm surrounding us, at the impossible figures within it. Jim, people are dying. Civilians, law enforcement, maybe kids. If you know something that could help. Another pause. There's an object in the archive. Sub-basement 3. I can get you in, but Jake, there are things about that artifact that nobody understands. The researchers who studied it all went insane or disappeared. We're running out of options, Jim. I'll meet you at the south gate. But Jake, bringing that thing back to the desert, it might make things worse. I had to make a choice. Stay here and watch my county die, or risk everything on legends and artifacts. Sarah, how are those sirens? Ready. It'll be loud and disorienting, but I can't guarantee it'll work. It just needs to work long enough for us to get out. Emily, you're with me. Sarah, Marcus, hold the fort. Rodriguez, I need your best drivers. Sheriff, you can't go out there, Betty protested. I'm not asking anyone else to do it. When we activate the sirens, we run for the remaining vehicle. One chance. Emily grabbed her research materials. Jake, there's something else. The harvest has a time limit. Dawn. If they don't collect their 49 by sunrise, they returned to sleep for another cycle. I checked my watch. 6 hours until dawn. Then we'd better hurry. Sarah activated the modified sirens. The sound was unlike anything I'd ever heard, an oscillating frequency that made my teeth hurt and my vision blur. But it worked. The dust cloud recoiled, the figures within writhing and dissipating. We ran. Rodriguez had kept one vehicle in the motor pool, an old military surplus Humvee we used for rough terrain. Emily and I dove in with Rodriguez and 2 Border Patrol volunteers. The engine roared to life, and we punched through the dissipating dust cloud. Behind us, the sirens continued their assault on the harvesters, but I could see in the mirrors that the dust was already reforming, adapting to the frequency. We drove into the darkness, toward Fort Huachuca, and an artifact that might be our only hope, or our doom. The radio crackled with Sarah's voice. "Sheriff, the sirens are failing. They're coming inside." The 60-mile drive to Fort Huachuca should have taken an hour. We made it in 35 minutes, Rodriguez pushing the Humvee to its limits. The desert flew by in a blur of shadows and stars, but I kept watching the mirrors. The dust cloud wasn't following us. It had stayed at the station. "They're not chasing us," Emily observed. "Why?" "Maybe they know where we're going," Rodriguez said grimly. The radio had gone mostly silent. Occasional bursts of static and fragmented transmission suggested our people were still alive, but I couldn't raise Sarah or Marcus directly. The last clear message from Betty was that 17 more people had been collected across the county. We were at 29 confirmed. 20 to go. Fort Huachuca appeared ahead, its lights a beacon in the darkness. Colonel Patterson met us at the south gate with a small security detail. He looked haggard. "Jake, I've been monitoring your situation. Satellite footage shows anomalies throughout your county." "Anomalies?" He handed me a tablet showing thermal imaging from orbit. Cochise County looked like it was covered in a spider web of cold spots, each one moving independently but somehow coordinated. "Jim, we need that artifact." "Jake," I pulled the file. "That thing has a body count. Every researcher who spent more than a few hours with it either disappeared or was committed to psychiatric facilities. The last study was in 1987. The lead scientist, Dr. Marcus Webb, left a note before he vanished. It shows you the truth. The truth is hungry. We don't have a choice." Patterson led us through security checkpoints and down into the bowels of the facility. Sub-Basement 3 was a repository of things the military didn't talk about. A warehouse of classified objects and failed experiments. The artifact was in Vault 7, behind 3 feet of reinforced steel. Patterson's hands shook as he entered the code. "Jake, I'm only doing this because I trust you. But if this goes wrong..." "It's already wrong, Jim." The vault door opened with a hiss of pressurized air. Inside, on a simple pedestal, was an object that defied easy description. It was crystalline but not quite solid, about the size of a basketball, with internal structures that seemed to shift and move. It pulsed with a faint light that didn't illuminate anything around it. Emily approached it slowly. "This is it, the heart of the desert. The Odom texts describe it perfectly." "Don't touch it directly," Patterson warned. "Use these." He handed us thick gloves marked with radiation warnings. As I lifted the artifact, I heard something. Not with my ears, but in my mind. Whispers in a language that predated words, showing me images of the desert before humans, before life as we knew it. I saw the harvesters as they truly were, beings of pure energy that existed between dimensions, feeding on the spark that separated living from dead. "Jake?" Emily's voice snapped me back. "You were standing there for 5 minutes completely still." 5 minutes, it had felt like seconds. We need to go. As we left the vault, alarms began blaring throughout the base. Perimeter breach, Patterson's radio announced. Multiple contacts at the south gate. We ran. Through the corridors, up the stairs, Patterson's security detail forming a protective circle around us. We burst into the night to find the base under siege. The dust cloud had arrived, but it was different now. More solid, more focused. The harvesters weren't hiding in sand anymore. They stood revealed, tall figures of living shadow with eyes that burned like cold stars. They moved through the base's defenses like they weren't there, walking through walls, ignoring gunfire. "They want the heart," Emily said. "We're taking it back to where it belongs. They're either going to help us or one of the beings materialized directly in front of us. This close, I could see it clearly. It wasn't entirely physical. Parts of it existed in spaces our eyes couldn't properly process. Its face was an absence rather than a presence, a void that pulled at your vision. It spoke, not in words but in understanding that appeared directly in our minds. The compact was broken. The theft must be corrected. The harvest must be completed. We're trying to return it," I said, holding up the artifact. "Too late. The 49 must be claimed. Then the heart returns. Then we sleep. There has to be another way." The being tilted its head, an oddly human gesture from something so alien. "You would offer yourself?" "What?" Emily grabbed my arm. "Jake, no. It's asking if you'll volunteer to be one of the 49. If it saves others, no." Rodriguez interrupted, stepping forward. "I'll do it." "Rodriguez." He smiled sadly. "Sheriff, I've been seeing things in the desert for months. Hearing voices. I think they've been calling me. Maybe this is why." Before anyone could stop him, Rodriguez walked toward the being. It reached out with one impossibly long arm and touched his forehead. Rodriguez's eyes rolled back, showing only white, and he stood perfectly still. But he didn't fall. He turned to us, and when he spoke, it was with multiple voices, his own and something ancient. "The heart must return to the chamber beneath the dragoons. The blood circle must be completed. 49 souls, freely given or taken by force. This is the law." "Freely given?" I asked. "People can volunteer?" "Those who offer themselves preserve something of their essence. Those who are taken do not." Patterson's men were falling back as more harvesters appeared. The base was being overrun, but they weren't attacking. They were hurting us. "We need to get to the dragoons," I decided. "Emily, where exactly is this chamber?" She pulled out her GPS, marking a location. "Here." "But Jake, if people volunteer, who would?" My radio crackled to life. It was Sarah. Her voice strained but determined. "Sheriff, we heard everything. The signal's been broadcasting on all channels. We've been getting calls, people are volunteering. The terminal patients at the hospital, the elderly who don't want to see their grandchildren taken. Sheriff, they're offering themselves." My throat tightened. The people of Cochise County, facing the impossible, were choosing sacrifice over submission. "How many?" 18 so far. Including, she paused, including Deputy Johnson. He says he's got terminal cancer anyway, didn't want to die in a hospital bed. Rodriguez, still speaking with multiple voices, said, "Noble sacrifice preserves the soul. It will not be lost, only transformed." We loaded into the Humvee, the artifact secured in a containment case. The harvesters didn't try to stop us. They followed, a parade of shadows and dust, escorting us toward the dragoons. The radio continued to bring updates. 25 volunteers, 30. 35. Sheriff? Betty's voice came through. Older and tired. Put me on the list. Betty, no. I'm 78 years old, Jake. I've lived my life. Let me make it count for something. 36. We reached the Dragoon Mountains as the eastern sky began to lighten. Emily led us up a narrow trail I'd never noticed before, despite years of patrolling these mountains. The harvesters flowed around us like water, their forms becoming less solid as dawn approached. The cave entrance was hidden behind a fall of rocks that looked natural but wasn't. Inside, ancient symbols covered the walls. Not just Native American, but older things. Symbols that hurt to look at directly. The chamber was at the heart of the mountain, a natural cathedral of stone. In the center was a depression, clearly meant to hold the heart. Around it, 49 smaller depressions formed concentric circles. The volunteers were already arriving. I don't know how they found the place. Perhaps the harvesters guided them. Perhaps something else called them. Deputy Johnson was there, pale but resolute. Betty, wearing her best Sunday dress. Others I recognized, ranchers, nurses, teachers, people who had decided that their sacrifice meant something. Sheriff, Johnson said, don't try to stop us. This is our choice. Emily was studying the walls. There's more here. Instructions, or maybe warnings. If the ritual is completed properly, the barrier will be restored, but stronger this time. The harvesters won't be able to return for 1,000 years instead of a few hundred. And if it's not completed properly, the barrier fails permanently. They'll be free to harvest whenever they want. We were at 41 volunteers. 8 more needed. Rodriguez, still possessed or merged with the harvester, spoke. Time grows short. When the sun crests the mountain, the choice is made. Volunteers or victims. I looked at the assembled volunteers, these brave people ready to give everything. Then I looked at my team, my friends. I'll do it, I said. Jake, no, Emily protested. You're needed here. So is everyone else. Marcus stepped forward. If the sheriff's going, I'm going too. Marcus, no debate, Sheriff. You trained me. I'm not letting you do this alone. Sarah limped into the cave, supported by 2 other deputies. There was blood on her uniform. The station was overrun just after you left, but we held them off long enough. She smiled weakly. Count me in. Sarah, you're injured. I'm dying, Jake. Internal bleeding. The medics said I have maybe an hour. Let me make it matter. 44. The sun was beginning to crest the eastern peaks. The harvesters were growing agitated, their forms flickering between solid and ethereal. That's when the children arrived. A school bus, driven by their teacher, Mrs. Nancy Chen. 15 kids, aged 8 to 10, on an early morning field trip that had gone horribly wrong when the harvest began. The harvesters had surrounded them, but not taken them. Not why? No, I said firmly. Not the children. Mrs. Chen stepped off the bus. She was young, maybe 25, first year teaching. Sheriff, if I volunteer, will you promise to get them home safe? Nancy, promise me. I promise. 45. 4 more needed, and minutes left. The harvesters were closing in on the bus. The children inside were crying. That's when I heard engines. Motorcycles. A dozen riders roared into the cave entrance. The Desert Demons, a motorcycle club that usually gave us nothing but trouble. Their leader, a giant of a man called Big Tom, dismounted. Heard you needed volunteers, Sheriff. Tom, this isn't your fight. The hell it isn't. This is our county, too. He looked at his men. Who's with me? 3 others stepped forward. 49. As the sun fully crested the mountain, the ritual began. The 49 volunteers took their positions in the circular depressions around the heart of the desert. As each person stepped into place, the stone beneath their feet began to glow with a soft amber light, like sunset captured in rock. I stood in my designated spot, looking at the faces around me. Deputy Johnson, cancer-thin but standing proud. Betty, clutching her rosary. Mrs. Chen, tears streaming down her face, but jaw set with determination. Big Tom and his bikers, looking uncomfortable but resolute. Sarah, being held up by Marcus, both of them managing to smile. "Whatever happens," I called out, "you're all heroes. Cochise County will remember." The harvesters formed their own circle around us, their shadow forms now fully visible in the dawn light. They were beautiful and terrible, ancient beings that existed in spaces our minds couldn't fully comprehend. Rodriguez stood among them, his human form overlaid with something else, something that belonged to the space between stars. Emily placed the heart in its central depression. The moment it touched the stone, everything changed. The cave walls disappeared, or rather, we could suddenly see through them, past them, into dimensions that overlapped our own. I saw the desert not as it was, but as it had been. An ocean, then a jungle, then something else, something that existed before Earth had settled into its current form. And through it all, the harvesters had been here, feeding on the energy that sparked when one form of life transformed into another. The heart pulsed, and with each pulse, I felt something being drawn from me. Not painful, but profound, like remembering a dream while still inside it. The other volunteers were experiencing the same thing. Betty's rosary fell from her fingers, but she was smiling. Johnson's cancer-racked body straightened, his face peaceful. Rodriguez, speaking with the voice of the harvesters, began the incantation. It wasn't in any language humans had ever spoken. It was older, the sound reality made when it bent and folded. Each word resonated through our bones, our souls, the very atoms of our being. From Earth we came, to Earth we return. From stars we descended, to stars we ascend. The compact sealed in willing blood, the harvest given freely, the hunger satisfied with honor. I felt my consciousness expanding, touching the minds of the other volunteers. In that moment, we were not 49 individuals, but one entity united in purpose. I experienced Johnson's memories of his grandchildren, Betty's first day as dispatcher, Sarah's pride when she made deputy, Marcus's decision to become a cop, Mrs. Chen's joy at teaching, Big Tom's love for the open road. But more than that, I felt what we were becoming. Not dead, not alive, but something else. Guardians, watchers, part of the barrier itself. The children in the bus were crying. Through my expanding awareness, I could hear Emily trying to comfort them, telling them to look away. But one child, a little girl named Maria, pressed her face against the window and called out, "Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you for keeping us safe." That nearly broke me. But then I felt Sarah's strength flowing through our connection, Marcus's determination, Betty's faith. We were in this together. The heart's pulsing intensified. The amber light from the floor rose like liquid, covering our feet, our legs, climbing higher. It didn't hurt. It felt like coming home after a long journey, like sinking into warm water after a day in the cold desert. As the light reached my chest, I saw them clearly for the first time, not the harvesters, but what they truly were. Beings of pure consciousness that had been trapped in this dimension eons ago, forced to feed on life energy to maintain their existence. They weren't evil, just hungry, eternally, desperately hungry. We did not choose this, their collective voice echoed in my mind. When our dimension collapsed, we fled here. But your reality requires energy we do not possess. We must feed or fade into nothing. The compact your ancestors made gave us scheduled feedings, controlled harvests. When it was broken, we grew desperate. And now? I asked, though my mouth no longer moved. Now balance is restored. The willing sacrifice provides more energy than the forced harvest ever could. You, 49, will sustain us for the next cycle. And in return, we will guard the barrier, keep worse things from breaking through. Worse things? They showed me. For just a moment, I saw what waited beyond our reality's borders. Things that made the harvesters look like children. Entities of pure chaos that would unravel the laws of physics just by existing in our space. The harvesters weren't just feeding on us. They were protecting us, maintaining a barrier that kept these horrors at bay. The amber light reached my head, and my individual consciousness began to dissolve. But it wasn't death, it was transformation. I became part of something larger, older, more permanent than human life. Through my fading human perception, I saw Emily grab the children and run as the cave began to shift and change. The stone was sealing itself, creating a new configuration that would hold for the next 1,000 years. The heart of the desert pulsed one final time, then went dark, its energy distributed through the 49 of us who were becoming something new. Rodriguez was the last to speak with a human voice. Tell them we're still here, still watching, still protecting. The desert remembers everything, and now we are part of its memory. Then the transformation was complete. I'm recording this on the first anniversary of what the media called the Cochise County event. The official story was a chemical spill from a classified military transport that caused mass hallucinations and resulted in 49 casualties. The families were compensated, the area was cleaned up, and life went on. But I know the truth. And more importantly, I know they're still there. I go to the Dragoons every week, to the place where the cave used to be. It's sealed now, the entrance hidden behind a wall of stone that looks completely natural. But if you know where to look, if you go at sunrise or sunset, you can see them. Shadows that move independently of their sources. Dust devils that spell out messages. And sometimes on very quiet mornings you can hear them. Jake's voice telling me to look after the county. Sarah laughing at something Marcus said. Betty humming her favorite hymn. They're not gone. They've become something else. Something that stands between us and the darkness that waits beyond. The children from the bus have formed a club. They call themselves the 49 Guardians. Every month, they leave flowers at a memorial in the desert. Maria, the little girl who thanked Jake, says she dreams about them sometimes. She says they're happy, or at least at peace. The new sheriff, a transfer from Phoenix, doesn't believe any of it. But he's noticed things. How crime has dropped to almost nothing in the areas near the sealed cave. How people report feeling watched over, protected. How the desert seems more alive, more aware. The Border Patrol agents tell stories, too. About shapes in the darkness that turn smugglers around without violence. About lost migrants being guided to water by dust devils that move with purpose. About children separated from groups being returned safely by shadows that walk like men. Rodriguez's family received a sign. A perfect circle of 49 stones appeared in their yard one night, with a note written in the sand. Still serving, still protecting. The government monitors the area constantly. Satellites, ground sensors, regular patrols. They know something happened here, something outside their understanding. Sometimes, men in black suits come to ask me questions. I tell them the official story and they pretend to believe me. But late at night, when I'm alone with my research, I study the patterns. The harvesters will return in 1,000 years, as they have before. But this time, we'll be ready. The knowledge has been preserved, hidden in places the government will never think to look. Instructions for the next generation, warnings about breaking the compact, and most importantly, the truth about sacrifice. The 49 volunteers didn't die. They transformed, becoming part of the barrier that protects our reality. They are the thin line between our world and chaos, the guardians who stand watch in the spaces between spaces. Sometimes I wonder if Jake knew what would really happen when he volunteered. If he understood that he wasn't dying but becoming something more. I think he did. Jake always understood the desert better than most. Knew it was more than just sand and heat. He knew it was alive, watching, remembering. The desert doesn't forget. It remembers every footstep, every life, every death. And now, 49 souls are part of that memory, woven into the fabric of reality itself. Cochise County is different now. Safer, but also stranger. People report odd dreams, visions of loved ones who were among the 49. Children born after the event seem to know things they shouldn't, have an innate understanding of the desert's moods and warnings. The Hendricks Ranch, where we found the second group of bodies, has been abandoned. But flowers grow there now, in a perfect circle. Flowers that shouldn't be able to survive in the desert. The locals leave it alone, understanding without being told that it's sacred ground. Last week I received a package with no return address. Inside was a piece of amber, perfectly clear with something impossible at its center. A fragment of light that moves and pulses like it's alive. There was a note in Jake's handwriting. Though how that's possible I don't know. The compact holds. The barrier stands. We are always watching. Take care of our county, Emily, and remember, the desert never forgets, but sometimes it forgives. I wear the amber on a chain around my neck. It's warm against my skin, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Sometimes, in the corner of my eye, I see Jake standing beside me, transparent as shadow but undeniably there. He smiles, tips his sheriff's hat, and fades. The government has classified everything about the Cochise County event. The official reports are buried. The witnesses have been silenced or discredited. But the truth lives on in the desert, in the shadows, in the spaces between what we see and what we know. 49 heroes gave themselves to save hundreds, maybe thousands. They became the wall between our world and something hungry and patient and older than time. They are still out there, still protecting us, still serving. Sheriff Jake Morrison was right about one thing above all else. The desert doesn't forget. It remembers its guardians, its protectors, its children, and as long as the compact holds, as long as the barrier stands, Cochise County will never be alone in the darkness. Some nights, when the wind is just right, you can hear them. 49 voices carried on the desert breeze, singing a song older than humanity, a promise of protection that will last for 1,000 years. The harvest is over, the guardians stand watch, and the desert remembers everything. End of recording. Final note. Written in the margin of the official report by an unknown hand. They think the story ends here. They think the 49s are gone, that the barrier will hold for a millennium. But I've been watching, and I've seen things they haven't. The harvesters took 49, yes, but something else noticed. Something else is curious about the little world that fights so hard to survive. The desert remembers, but it also whispers. And lately, it's been whispering about visitors. New ones, different ones. The kind that don't need to harvest because they are the harvest. Sheriff Morrison and his volunteers bought us time. 1,000 years, they said. But I don't think we have that long. The universe has noticed Earth, noticed humanity's willingness to sacrifice, to transform, to adapt. And the universe is hungry too. The next harvest won't come from the desert. It will come from the stars. Be ready.